Have you ever been told that kindness is its own reward? That seems to be true a lot in our society today. Sometimes we do kind things and we reap no benefits from it. I'm going to read a story today about just that. It's called The Magic Garden from Kazakhstan. In olden times in Kazakhstan, there lived two neighbors. Asan was a farmer and Hassan was a shepherd. They were friends. One year the winter was so severe and the land was so frozen that Hassan's sheep couldn't reach the grass under the ice, and his whole flock perished. Blinking back tears, Hassan went to his friend. "My flock has all gone," he told him. "Without them, I cannot survive, so I'm leaving. Goodbye, Hassan." But Hassan would not hear of it. "Never," he vowed. "You shall have half of my land and share my farm with me." "Hassan, you are generous and kind, but I cannot accept," the shepherd protested. "Your field is small already. You cannot make it any smaller." "Nonsense," insisted the farmer. "You are my friend, and I want you to stay. True, we will have less than before, but we will have enough." I will not take no for an answer. At this, Hassan's tears overflowed, and he hugged his friend to his chest, so the shepherd stayed. Days passed, and nights passed, months passed, and years passed. One day, Hassan was working in his field when, clunk, his hoe struck something hard, an old pot. Hassan heaved it out of the ground and looked inside. His mouth fell open. Gold coins. "Hassan, Hassan," called the shepherd. "You're rich, look." The farmer smiled warmly. "Hassan, how unselfish you are, but this is your gold, not mine. After all, you found it yourself on your own land." "You have already given me enough." Hassan held out the pot. "Here, take your treasure." "Your treasure," corrected Hassan. "You keep it." Hassan and Hassan began to argue. For the first time, the two friends could not agree. Finally, they decided to go to the village wise man for help with their problem. Inside his yurt, the wise man sat with 4 students. Bowing low, the visitors explained their problem. The wise man listened. Hassan and Hassan waited and waited, but for a long time the wise man sat in silence. He turned not to Hassan nor Hassan, but to his first student and said, "Here is an interesting situation," he said. "Tell me, what would you advise?" The first student answered immediately, "The solution is obvious. The gold came from the ground. Neither of these men will accept it, so bury the gold back in the ground again." The wise man frowned. He turned to his second student. "And what do you suggest?" The second student answered, "The gold was brought to you. I think you should keep it yourself." The wise man raised his eyebrows. "Indeed." He turned to his third student. "And what would you say?" "The gold was found in a field. The field is in the kingdom, and the kingdom belongs to the Khan. Let the Khan keep all of the treasure." The wise man's face darkened. "And you?" he asked his last and youngest student. The boy, Armand, gave a little shake of his head, as if to blow away a daydream. "Well, I do have one idea." He hesitated. "If I were to choose what to do with the gold, I would buy seeds. Then we could plant a garden." And with shining eyes he described his vision. He spoke of a beautiful garden where people could come to rest and play, birds and animals could make their homes, wildflowers could flourish, and bees and butterflies could thrive. The wise man was listening with his eyes closed. Now he lay his hand on the boy's arm. "Your decision is wise." He turned to the 2 men. "Do you agree?" Hassan and Hassan looked at each other and nodded. "Yes, yes, a garden. Let there be a garden." So the wise man instructed his disciple, "Go to the capital with the gold. Buy the finest seeds that you can find. Then, on the steps, plant the garden of your dreams." And so the student set off, overjoyed by his good luck. For many days Armand traveled the dry and dusty trail until he came to the royal city. But oh, what a hubbub! The noise! The color! On every side merchants called, selling strange and wonderful wares. The din of a dozen languages made his head buzz. Pungent incense made his nose tickle and his eyes prickle. At last he stumbled and bumped his way to the seller of seeds. As he fingered the precious kernels, a piteous crying made him spin around. Crossing the square was a caravan strung with birds of every kind. There were thousands of them, and they were alive. The birds' feet were tied, and their wings were crusted with dust. With every lurching movement of the caravan, the birds' heads banging against the camels' sides. Armand couldn't stand it. Without a second thought, he confronted the caravan leader. "What are you doing with these birds?" he demanded. "These birds are for the table of the Khan," the camel driver answered. "He will feast on their meat and decorate his palace with their feathers. I have here birds caught in the deserts, steppes, and mountains, birds trapped in woodlands, marshes, and lakes. I have the rarest birds in the whole kingdom. Some of them are the last of their kind." Armand could not believe the pride in the man's voice. "I will give you gold," said Armand, "if you let these birds go." The man laughed and began to lead his camels away. "No, look." Armand opened his bag, revealing the treasure. The camel driver's eyes widened. This was more than even the Khan would pay. He snatched the bag quickly before the boy could change his mind. Armand began untying the birds. The stronger birds stretched their wings and soared up into the sky, but some were too weak to fly. These Armand placed carefully on the ground. When the birds were free, he picked up an injured starling. He warmed his hands up. Then, using a single feather, he massaged gently around the bird's head. Now the bird sat quietly on this open palm. It looked around and then flew away. Soon it took Armand the whole day, but with each one that took to the sky, his heart was a little lighter. Then, at last, he dusted off his knees and turned for home. He felt warm, as though he were glowing, and his feet skipping along. But as he neared home, his feet seemed to grow heavier and heavier. "You fool, Armand," he thought to himself. "That gold was meant to buy seeds. What would he say to his master and to the kind-hearted neighbors? It was their money. They had trusted him with it, and he had lost it all. And now there will be no garden," he said aloud, and with that thought he slumped to the ground and wept. Nearby, a starling cocked its head, listening. Then it flew away. What was that noise? Looking up, Armand found that the air rushing with wings and brilliant feathers. Bird after bird glided down to him. "You saved our lives," sang the bird. "Now let us help you." The boy looked around in astonishment. The whole vast steppe was busy with birds, scratching the earth and pecking the ground, preparing the land for planting. Falcons alighted from distant lands, their beaks full of exotic seeds. Using wing and beak and claw, the birds planted the seeds with powerful talons. Eagles dug out ponds, and pelicans brought water to fill them. For a long time, Armand sat entranced. When he stood up, the birds rushed into the sky as one. And now, what magic was this? The seeds were sprouting. Before he could blink, the stalks grew into trees and blossomed. Before he could think, The blossoms fell, and there were apples as round and shiny as gold coins. The grass swayed with poppies and tulips. Petal-strewn paths wove between tranquil pools, and 1,000 birds were singing. Armand stared. Was he dreaming? To be sure, he plucked a golden apple and ran with it back to the wise man's yurt. Armand! The wise man opened his arms wide and embraced his student. Bright-eyed and breathless, Armand poured out his adventures and held out the golden fruit. The wise man crunched into the apple. Its sweet juices filled his mouth, and he knew that the golden treasure had been transformed. Shining with happiness, Armand led the wise man, Hassan and Hassan, to the garden. Soon the people of the steppes arrived. Hassan and Hassan watched them stroll beneath the trees. The old friends looked at each other and grinned. People young and old rested and played. The fresh fruit and clean water nourished their bodies. The cool shade and soft lawns rested their minds, and the sound of 1,000 birds singing sent their spirits soaring. Such a story of the magic garden, which grew from generosity of 2 old friends and the dream of 1 young boy. So in the story, the two friends were both generous and kind to each other, and when they needed help, they went to the wise man, and through him, he sent the young boy to get the seeds to create the garden, and through the young boy's kindness to the birds, he was able to create this garden from the birds. So everyone's kindness was returned into this beautiful magical garden. And the book that I read this from is The Barefoot Book of Earth Tales, and it is written by Don Casey and Ann Wilson. And that was The Magic Garden, and it's a story from Kazakhstan.